soft music fades. The hush of an Italian breeze stirs marble leaves. As you settle in, allow your mind to drift gently across the centuries, to a time of winding cobblestone streets, flickering oil lamps, and the distant toll of cathedral bells. It is the late 13th century, in the bustling, quarrelsome city of Florence, a place of soaring towers, passionate politics, and brilliant minds. Here, amid narrow alleys and fragrant markets, is born one of the most enduring literary visions in human history, the Divine Comedy, written by the Florentine poet Dante Alighieri. Tonight, we will journey softly through Dante's masterpiece from the shadowed depths of hell to the radiant summit of paradise, guided by the poet himself. But first, let us linger a while in the world that gave birth to this timeless tale. Dante Alighieri was born in Florence in the year 1265. His life was shaped by love, exile, and a profound belief in the power of language to illuminate truth. Florence, his native city, was not yet the graceful cradle of the Renaissance, but already it pulsed with cultural energy. Merchants and philosophers, artists and knights filled its plazas and cloisters. Gothic churches rose steadily toward the heavens, their stained glass windows casting jeweled light upon stone floors. Yet Florence was also torn by factional strife. Two rival political parties, the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, vied for control, dragging the city into cycles of revenge and turmoil. Dante himself was caught in these political crosswinds. As a member of the White Guelphs, he sought to defend the independence of Florence against both papal interference and foreign domination, but his efforts would end in personal tragedy. In the year 1302, while on a diplomatic mission, Dante was condemned to exile by his enemies. Stripped of his property and forbidden to return on pain of death, he became a wanderer, a poet, without a home. It was during this long exile, wandering from court to court, that Dante began writing the Divine Comedy. Composed in 3 parts, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, the poem is framed as a spiritual journey. Dante, as the narrator, finds himself lost in a dark wood at the midpoint of life. Guided first by the Roman poet Virgil, and later by Beatrice, the symbol of divine love, he travels through the realms of the afterlife, witnessing the fate of souls and reflecting on the nature of sin, redemption, and divine justice. But the Divine Comedy is more than an account of the afterlife. It is a sweeping vision of the medieval world, its cosmology, its theology, its political grievances, and its deepest hopes. Dante draws upon classical literature, Christian doctrine, and his own turbulent experiences to weave a narrative that is at once deeply personal and universally resonant. He writes not in Latin as most scholars of his time did, but in the Tuscan vernacular, the everyday Italian spoken by ordinary people. In doing so, Dante elevated the common tongue into a language of epic expression, shaping the very foundations of modern Italian. His journey is carefully structured. Inferno consists of 9 circles of hell, each punishing a different kind of sin, from lust to treachery. Purgatorio ascends the 7 terraces of Mount Purgatory, where souls cleanse themselves of pride, envy, wrath, and other earthly stains. Paradiso, the final part, rises through the 9 celestial spheres of heaven, culminating in the Empyrean, the realm of pure light and the presence of God. The poem is composed in a strict meter known as terza rima, a 3-line rhyme scheme that mirrors the sacred number of the Trinity. The symmetry and musicality of the verse create a dreamlike rhythm, drawing us gently along from canto to canto, vision to vision. As we drift through these realms tonight, we will pause often to explore the vivid landscapes Dante paints, the icy winds of Cocytus, the golden dawns of Mount Purgatory, the crystalline spheres of paradise. We will meet souls both famous and forgotten philosophers, popes, lovers, and warriors, each given their place in the cosmic order. Through it all, Dante's voice remains calm, reflective, and unwavering, inviting us to see not only the afterlife, but our own lives more clearly. This story is one of moral clarity and mystical wonder. It reminds us that every action, every choice, ripples through eternity. And yet, it also reassures us that no soul is beyond redemption, no journey without purpose, no night without the promise of dawn. So now, as sleep begins to settle softly around you, close your eyes, breathe gently, and let us begin this sacred voyage together. We will follow Dante's footsteps, one gentle line at a time, from the dark wood of confusion to the dazzling light of divine love. Let us begin. In the shadowed silence of hell, the stars have vanished. A heavy stillness surrounds you. You find yourself, as Dante once did, in a dark wood. The trees are dense, their branches tangled like thoughts that have lost their way. This forest is not merely a place, it is a state of mind, a symbol of moral confusion and spiritual peril. Dante, now 35 years old, what medieval scholars called the midpoint of life, has strayed from the straight path. He does not know how he came to this place. Fear grips him, and as he tries to escape the woods, he climbs a nearby hill, hoping to glimpse the light. But three beasts appear to block his way, a leopard, a lion, and a she-wolf, allegories of sin and temptation. They drive him back into the darkness. It is then that a figure appears from the mist. Tall, solemn, and wrapped in the dignity of ancient Rome, this is the poet Virgil, author of the Aeneid, Dante's literary guide and spiritual mentor. Virgil explains that Dante cannot escape the forest on his own. To find salvation, he must descend through hell, ascend the mountain of Purgatory, and then rise to the stars. Dante hesitates, but Virgil reassures him. The journey has been ordained by three heavenly ladies, the Virgin Mary, Saint Lucia, and Beatrice, Dante's beloved, who now dwells in paradise. With their divine protection, Dante agrees to begin. The two descend toward the gates of hell. Carved into stone are the immortal words, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." They step across the threshold. The air grows heavier. Groans, cries, and the rustle of unseen wings fill the void. This is the vestibule of hell, the place for souls who lived without infamy or virtue. They took no side, committed no crime, but also no good. Now, in eternal restlessness, they chase a blank banner through a gray, stinging wind, stung endlessly by wasps and hornets, punished not for sin, but for cowardice. From here, Dante and Virgil cross the river Acheron. The ferryman, Charon, protests at carrying a living soul, but is silenced by a divine command. As they cross, the earth shakes. Dante faints. When he awakens, he finds himself on the other side, at the entrance to the first circle of hell, limbo. This is not a place of torment, but of longing. It holds virtuous pagan souls who lived before Christianity or without baptism. Here reside the great minds of antiquity, Homer, Socrates, Aristotle, and Cicero. Dante, honoring their wisdom, walks among them in awe. Yet even these noble spirits are denied the sight of God, their punishment being absence, a subtle but eternal grief. As the descent continues, the landscape darkens. Each circle punishes a different sin with poetic and moral symmetry. The second circle holds the lustful. Here, lovers are caught in an endless storm, forever blown about by the winds of passion they once embraced. Dante meets Francesca da Rimini, who fell in love with her brother-in-law, Paolo. As she recounts their tragic affair, Dante is overcome by pity and faints once more. In the third circle, the gluttonous lie in filth, tormented by freezing rain and guarded by Cerberus, the three-headed dog of myth. These souls, who indulged without thought, now wallow in the excess they once pursued. The fourth circle punishes the greedy, both hoarders and wasters. They push great stones against one another in a futile, grinding contest. "Why do you hoard?" One cries. "Why do you waste?" The other answers. Their struggle is endless, their sin one of imbalance. The fifth circle brings us to the river Styx, the wrathful fight upon its surface, their anger bubbling in a ceaseless brawl. Beneath the water, the sullen gurgle and sulk, imprisoned in their own despair. Dante and Virgil are ferried across by Phlegyas, a furious spirit. They pass the walls of Dis, the city of lower hell. Here, in the sixth circle, lie the heretics, those who denied the soul's immortality. They burn in fiery tombs, eternally entombed in their disbelief. From here, the descent becomes more harrowing. The seventh circle is divided into 3 rings, punishing violence in its many forms. In the outer ring are those who committed violence against others, tyrants and murderers, immersed in a boiling river of blood, watched by centaurs with bows. The middle ring contains those who harmed themselves, the suicides. Transformed into thorny trees, they bleed when broken. Dante speaks with Pierre della Vigna, who once served the Emperor Frederick II, but took his own life when falsely accused. The innermost ring punishes those who committed violence against God, nature, or art. Here, blasphemers lie on burning sand under a rain of fire. Among them is Capaneus, a defiant soul still cursing God. Crossing a fragile bridge of rock, Dante and Virgil enter the 8th circle Malabulge, the evil ditches, a vast 10-fold canyon spiraling into the earth. Each bulgia, or trench, holds a different class of fraud. Seducers march in opposite lines, scourged by demons. Flatterers sink in excrement. Simoniacs, churchmen who sold sacred offices, are buried head first, their feet aflame. Elsewhere are soothsayers, with their heads twisted backwards, hypocrites wearing gilded lead cloaks, and thieves tormented by serpents. In the Bolgia of false counselors, Dante meets Ulysses, not the Homeric hero, but a deceiver who led others to ruin. Dante listens in sorrow as Ulysses describes his final fatal voyage beyond the Pillars of Hercules. As they near the center, Virgil and Dante reach the 9th and final circle, Cocytus, a frozen lake where traitors are imprisoned in ice. Here, all warmth of love, of loyalty is extinguished. At its center lies the greatest traitor of all, Lucifer himself. Once the brightest of angels, now a hideous 3-faced giant, frozen waist-deep in the ice. In each of his 3 mouths, he chews eternally on a sinner, Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Christ, and Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed Caesar. It is a chilling scene, silent and vast. No fire, no brimstone, only the cold, crushing weight of betrayal. Virgil and Dante climb down the shaggy side of Lucifer, passing through the center of the earth. As they emerge on the other side, they find themselves beneath a vast, star-filled sky. The night is nearly over. In the distance, a mountain rises, the Mount of Purgatory. Dante looks up. For the first time, he sees hope. They have passed through the darkness. The worst is behind them. And now, as the stars begin to return, the path to redemption begins. As night yields to a soft and pearled dawn, Dante and Virgil emerge on the shores of a mysterious island in the southern hemisphere. This land is unknown to the maps of men, untouched by time or war. Rising high above them is a vast and solitary mountain, the Mount of Purgatory. According to medieval cosmology, when Lucifer fell from heaven and struck the earth, the impact pushed up this mountain, the only landmass in the Southern Ocean. It is here that souls come to be purified, to shed the weight of earthly sin before ascending to paradise. Purgatory, unlike hell, is a place of hope. Though the path is steep, every step is a step toward light. Souls here rejoice in their suffering, for they know their pain is not eternal. It is a cleansing fire, not a consuming one. As Dante gazes upward at the looming terraces of the mountain, he sees the dawn sky glowing with soft coral hues. The sea is calm, and the air feels light and fragrant. On the beach, recently arrived souls gather, disoriented but peaceful. They sing hymns, their voices rising like incense. One of them is Dante's old friend Casella, a musician who embraces the poet and sings a gentle love song from Dante's own writings, a moment of human sweetness before the climb begins. But the guardian of the mountain, Cato of Utica, urges them onward. Time here is precious. The soul must not linger, but begin its ascent. At the foot of the mountain lies Purgatory, where souls who delayed repentance in life must wait. Some were excommunicated, others negligent. They now tarry here until divine permission allows their climb. Even in Purgatory, justice is precise. As they proceed, Virgil explains that the mountain is divided into 7 terraces, each corresponding to one of the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, wrath, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lust. At the summit lies the earthly paradise, a garden of purity, the threshold to heaven. To aid their climb, an angel carves 7 P's into Dante's forehead, 1 for each sin, peccatum in Latin. As he ascends and is cleansed, each mark will be erased. The first terrace is pride. Here, the souls walk bent under heavy stones, their backs bowed low. These once raised themselves above others. Now they learn humility. Along the walls, bas-reliefs depict examples of humility: Mary at the Annunciation, David dancing before the ark. These images move and shift as if alive, teaching through beauty. The travelers continue upward. On the second terrace, the envious sit cloaked in coarse fabric, their eyes sewn shut with iron wire, a mirror of the way they looked with malice upon others in life. Voices in the air recite tales of generosity and kindness, nurturing the virtues that heal envy. The third terrace punishes wrath. Here, thick smoke blinds the souls, symbolic of the anger that once clouded their minds. In the smoke, Dante experiences visions of meekness, the peaceful reactions of Christ and saints when provoked. These counterexamples help the soul remember gentleness. After each terrace, an angel appears, brushing Dante's forehead with a wing and erasing one of the P's. The climb becomes lighter. The fourth terrace holds the slothful, not merely lazy, but those who failed to love with energy and zeal. They now run in endless haste, crying out stories of virtuous eagerness. Motion replaces indifference. Passion replaces idleness. On the fifth terrace, the avaricious and prodigal lie face down on the earth, weeping. They loved gold more than God, or squandered without thought. Their chants now praise simplicity and generosity. As Dante ascends, he becomes visibly transformed. The mountain does not punish, it teaches. Each terrace not only purifies, but realigns the soul with virtue. The punishment matches the sin not by cruelty, but by symmetry, an elegant inversion that reveals the inner logic of divine justice. The sixth terrace is gluttony. The souls here waste away with hunger and thirst. Trees heavy with fruit lean out of reach, tempting them as a test of temperance. They sing praises to moderation, recalling biblical stories of restraint. On the seventh terrace, lust, souls walk through cleansing fire. This final sin, the disordered desire of love, must be reoriented toward divine affection. The flames are painful, but necessary. Even Dante hesitates here. Virgil, ever the guide, urges him onward, reminding him that beyond the fire lies peace. At last, all 7 P's are gone. Dante is now prepared to enter the earthly paradise, the Garden of Eden, untouched since Adam and Eve. The garden is lush, eternal springtime. Flowers bloom without decay. The air is clear, the water pure. Here, Dante meets Matilda, a mysterious woman who represents active innocence. She prepares him for the arrival of one who has guided him in spirit all along, Beatrice. Beatrice appears on a celestial chariot, crowned and veiled in sacred symbolism. She is radiant, yet stern. Virgil, having brought Dante as far as reason can lead, now departs. His role is finished. It is Beatrice, the embodiment of divine love and theology, who must guide Dante the rest of the way. Dante is overwhelmed by her presence. He weeps for the sins that caused his spiritual wandering, and Beatrice chastises him gently, reminding him that true love is not just romantic longing, but the soul's desire for the divine. In this sacred garden, Dante drinks from two rivers Lethe, which washes away the memory of sin, and Juno, which restores the memory of good. These waters complete his transformation. He is now ready to rise. The stars shine brightly overhead. Paradise awaits. As we rise into the sky, the air becomes radiant. No longer does gravity pull. Instead, light itself draws us upward. Dante, cleansed of all sin, ascends with Beatrice into the celestial realms, a journey not through space as we know it, but through layers of divine reality. This is Paradiso, the final part of the Divine Comedy, and the most complex of vision of the soul's reunion with the divine. The structure of heaven, as Dante sees it, reflects the Ptolemaic universe, an elegant system of 9 concentric spheres, each representing a different heavenly influence. Beyond these lies the Empyrean, the realm of pure light, where God resides. Yet Dante is clear. The spheres are not the true dwelling places of souls. Rather, they appear here symbolically to match the pilgrim's ability to understand. Heaven accommodates the limits of the human mind by showing its truths in layers. It is not that the saints are divided. They are united in love, but appear in separate spheres to help Dante and us grasp their virtues. The journey begins in the moon, the first sphere. Here dwell souls who failed to keep their vows not out of malice, but due to external pressures. One such soul is Piccarda Donati, once a nun, who was forced to leave her convent. She smiles gently and speaks without bitterness. In heaven, no soul envies another's place, for all are filled perfectly according to their capacity. This is Dante's first glimpse of the divine order, not equality in position, but equality in fulfillment. The second sphere is Mercury, home to souls who did good works for earthly fame. They are not condemned, but their joy is dimmer than others. Justinian, the Roman emperor, explains the need for balance between justice and grace, law and love. In Venus, the third sphere, dwell those who loved passionately like Charles Martel and Cunissa da Romano. Their love was once directed imperfectly, but in heaven it has been refined into a glowing charity. Beatrice explains that human virtue depends on both nature and nurture. The soul must be educated, not merely born good. As they rise into the fourth sphere, the sun, Dante is dazzled. This is the realm of wisdom. Here, radiant souls circle around Dante and Beatrice like twin crowns of light. Among them are Thomas Aquinas, Albert the Great, and Solomon, theologians and philosophers who sought truth through reason illuminated by faith. They sing in harmony, their intellects united in praise. In the fifth sphere, Mars, Dante sees a red cross formed by the souls of warriors for the faith. One of them is his ancestor, Cacciaguida, who tells the poet of his noble Florentine lineage and predicts his future exile. This personal prophecy links Dante's earthly journey to his divine mission. He is to become a poet-prophet, speaking truth to a corrupted world. The sixth sphere is Jupiter, where rulers who embody justice form the shape of a great eagle. The eagle speaks with one voice, a symbol of unity and divine justice. Here, Dante learns that salvation is not confined to Christians alone. The mysterious emperor Trajan and the Trojan Ripheus are said to be saved, reminding us that God's mercy transcends human understanding. In Saturn, the seventh sphere, dwell the contemplatives, those who lived lives of prayer and holy solitude. Their ladder of golden light ascends into silence. Here, Dante meets Saint Benedict, who laments the corruption of monastic life on earth. The sphere is serene, filled with motionless flames that descend and rise in contemplation. As they move into the eighth sphere, the fixed stars, Dante beholds a glorious vision. He sees the Virgin Mary, surrounded by saints, and is tested on his knowledge of faith, hope, and love by Saints Peter, James, and John. Dante's answers, rooted in scripture and personal conviction, affirm that his transformation is complete. It is here that Dante gazes directly upon Christ, whose radiant light eclipses all other brilliance. And yet, the poet still sees through the veil of metaphor. His mortal eyes, though purified, are still not ready for the fullness of divine light. The ninth sphere is the primum mobile, the first mover, which turns all the others. It is invisible, pure motion. Here Dante sees 9 angelic orders arranged around a dazzling point of light, the source of all being. These angels, from the humble angels to the mighty seraphim, spin in joy around the divine center. Beatrice now turns her gaze upward. Her beauty, which has grown more radiant with each ascent, reflects the divine more perfectly than ever. She is no longer merely the girl Dante once loved, she is the symbol of divine love, of grace made visible. Together they enter the Empyrean, the realm beyond time and space. Here, all souls and angels dwell in the eternal now. There is no motion, no shadow, only light and love. Dante sees a river of living light, forming into the shape of a vast rose, its petals filled with saints. Angels fly like bees among them, carrying light and joy. At the center of the rose sits the Virgin Mary, closest to God in love and glory. Around her are Eve, Rachel, and Sarah, matriarchs of faith. Saint Bernard, the final guide, now replaces Beatrice and urges Dante to look beyond the rose, to the source of all light. And then silence. Dante looks up. He sees a point of light, brighter than all the stars combined, yet gentle to the soul. It is God. Around this point, 3 radiant circles interweave, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They are distinct, yet one. In the second circle, Dante perceives the image of a human face, the incarnation, the mystery of Christ. He struggles to understand how the human form fits within the divine, and in that final effort, his mind is overwhelmed. But just as understanding eludes him, his soul is filled with peace. His will is now in perfect harmony with God's. My desire and will were turned like a wheel by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. This final line is not a conclusion, but a return, a circle, a dance, a still point at the heart of all motion. Dante's journey is complete, from confusion to clarity, from exile to home, from darkness to the light beyond light. As you rest now, let these images settle into your dreams, the gentle slope of Purgatory's terraces, the singing spheres of heaven, the face of love at the center of the rose. The comedy is not just Dante's journey. It is ours, a map of the soul, a reminder that no matter how far we stray, the path home is always open. As we descend from the celestial heights of paradise, let us settle again in the world of stone and olive trees, of cloisters and towers, the medieval city of Florence. For to truly understand the Divine Comedy, we must also understand the earth from which it sprang. Dante's epic journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven was not only a spiritual pilgrimage, it was a response to exile, to political chaos, and to a longing for justice in a broken world. Florence, in the 13th century, was a city of wealth, intellect, and rising ambition. Once a modest Tuscan town, it had become a vibrant commercial hub. Its narrow streets bustled with merchants, money changers, silk traders, and scholars. Towering stone houses belonged to wealthy families who competed not only in commerce, but in civic pride and political power. Florence was also deeply divided. Like many cities in Italy at the time, it was caught in the violent struggle between 2 factions, the Guelphs, who supported the Pope, and the Ghibellines, who supported the Holy Roman Emperor. These labels masked deeper tensions between church and empire, between urban merchants and landed aristocracy, between progress and tradition. Dante was born in 1265 into a modestly noble Guelph family. His early education exposed him to the trivium and quadrivium grammar, logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, the classical foundations of medieval learning. He also studied theology and philosophy, eventually reading the works of Aristotle, Boethius, and Thomas Aquinas. Poetry, however, was his great passion. As a young man, Dante was profoundly influenced by the troubadour tradition and by the movement known as the Dolce Stil Novo, the sweet new style of poetry that praised love as a spiritual force. It was within this tradition that he immortalized Beatrice Portinari, a young woman he had admired since childhood, though they barely knew each other. Beatrice, who died young, would later become his guide through paradise, transformed from earthly muse into a symbol of divine grace. Dante also participated in public life. He held several positions in the Florentine government, including a post as one of the city's priori magistrates who governed for 2-month terms. But politics in Florence was treacherous. After the Guelphs expelled the Ghibellines in 1267, the Guelphs themselves fractured into 2 rival camps, the White Guelphs, who sought independence from papal interference, and the Black Guelphs, who favored stronger ties to Rome. Dante aligned with the White Guelphs. He believed that the Pope should focus on spiritual matters and leave the governance of cities to secular leaders. This belief would cost him dearly. In 1302, while Dante was on a diplomatic mission to Rome, the Black Guelphs seized power in Florence with the support of Pope Boniface VIII and the French Prince Charles of Valois. Dante was charged with corruption and self-interest, likely a political fabrication, and sentenced to exile under threat of execution if he returned. His property was confiscated. His name was defamed. He became a wanderer, traveling from court to court across Italy. Though he wrote moving pleas for pardon, Florence never allowed him to return. This exile marked a turning point in Dante's life and in his poetry. Stripped of his home and political identity, he turned inward. He began to write the Divine Comedy, not just as a work of imagination, but as a map of the human soul and a critique of the world he had known. It was an act of artistic redemption to create a vision of eternal order in response to earthly disorder. Many of the souls Dante places in hell are real people, corrupt popes, betraying politicians, greedy clerics. Others, like Virgil and Beatrice, are elevated beyond their historical selves into allegorical figures. Dante uses the poem to reward those he admired and punish those he felt had failed society. His judgments may seem harsh, but they reflect a deep concern for the moral health of the world. Dante's criticisms of the church are especially sharp. He condemns popes for simony, the selling of sacred offices, and laments the spiritual decay he saw in Rome. Pope Boniface VIII, who played a role in Dante's exile, is placed in hell even before his death, a rare literary vengeance. Yet Dante is not anti-Christian. On the contrary, he envisions a purified church, led by spiritual example rather than political ambition. In his political writings, such as De Monarchia, Dante advocates for a universal empire governed by reason and justice, coexisting with a reformed church that guides souls to salvation. His vision is idealistic, perhaps even utopian, but it reflects his longing for balance between temporal and eternal powers. Even his use of the Italian vernacular was a political act. By writing the Divine Comedy not in Latin, but in the everyday Tuscan dialect, Dante made literature accessible to a broader audience. He also helped elevate Italian as a literary language, shaping its development for centuries to come. It is not an exaggeration to say that Dante is the father of the Italian language. As the years passed, Dante's hope of returning to Florence faded. He found some protection under powerful patrons in Verona and Ravenna, where he finally completed the comedy in 1320. He died the following year, in 1321, and was buried in Ravenna. His tomb, modest and quiet, stands as a witness to his long exile from the city he loved and condemned. Florence, for its part, tried to recover its lost son. Over the centuries, the city repeatedly requested the return of Dante's remains, but Ravenna always refused. A cenotaph was eventually built in Santa Croce, an empty tomb honoring a poet whose body still lay in exile. And yet, Dante's spirit returned. His words, once written in bitterness and longing, became a source of pride. The Divine Comedy became not only a masterpiece of literature, but a mirror in which Florence and all of Italy could see its better self. As we close this chapter, we might reflect on the paradox of exile. Dante lost his home, but gained a higher vision. Cast out by his city, he wrote a poem for all humanity. His personal sorrow became a universal path from the confusion of the dark wood to the clarity of the stars. And in that journey, we are reminded, it is often from our deepest wounds that our most luminous truths emerge. Imagine a cathedral, not made of stone, but of verse. Each line a carved arch, each stanza a vaulted ceiling. The Divine Comedy is such a cathedral, a literary structure of almost mathematical perfection, built to last not decades, but centuries. As you drift deeper into rest, let us explore how this remarkable poem is built, how its architecture reflects its message, and how every detail resonates with purpose. Dante called his work a commedia, a comedy. In medieval terms, this did not mean humor, but rather a story that begins in difficulty and ends in joy. The word divine was added later by admirers to reflect its sacred content. It is, in essence, a spiritual autobiography written as a universal allegory. The entire poem is composed of exactly 100 cantos, a round and symbolic number. The opening canto serves as a prologue. The remaining 99 are divided evenly among the three realms, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, each containing 33 cantos. This triadic structure mirrors the Holy Trinity Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, a central concept in medieval theology. Within each canto, Dante uses a strict verse form called terza rima, a chain rhyme scheme of interlocking tercets A, B, A, B, C, B, C, D, C, and so on. This form, which Dante invented, pulls the reader forward, creating a rhythm of continuity and echo. It is both elegant and demanding, requiring immense skill to sustain for over 14,000 lines. Dante wrote the poem in Tuscan Italian, not in Latin, which was then the language of scholars and clergy. This choice was revolutionary. By elevating the vernacular into the medium of epic poetry, Dante made his work accessible to ordinary Italians and laid the foundation for modern Italian literature. His language is rich and layered, a tapestry of classical allusion, biblical reference, and lived experience. Symbolism pervades every level of the text. The number 3 appears constantly, not just in structure, but in themes, characters, and metaphors. Even hell, purgatory, and paradise are each divided into sub-levels based on the logic of threes. This numerical harmony is not arbitrary. It reflects the belief that the universe itself is created according to divine proportion, that order and meaning underlie all things. Dante's characters are not merely historical or mythological figures, they are symbols of larger truths. Virgil, for example, represents reason and classical wisdom. As the author of the Aeneid, he embodies the best of the pagan world, noble, but ultimately limited. He can guide Dante through hell and purgatory, but not into paradise. Beatrice, on the other hand, represents divine love and revelation. She is more than Dante's childhood muse. She is a symbol of grace, the soul's longing for the eternal. Only she can lead Dante into heaven, where reason alone cannot go. The journey through the three realms is also deeply psychological. Inferno represents the recognition of sin, Purgatorio the labor of repentance, and Paradiso, the reward of enlightenment. The landscape mirrors the soul's inner state. Hell is a funnel, narrowing toward isolation and cold. Purgatory is a mountain, climbed through effort and guided by hope. Heaven is an ascent through light, not physical light, but the light of understanding and divine presence. Dante draws freely from ancient and Christian sources. From Homer and Ovid, he borrows mythic figures. From Aristotle, a logical structure of ethics. From the Bible, he takes not only imagery, but a theological worldview in which justice and mercy are harmonized. He fuses these influences into something entirely new, a synthesis of classical order and Christian revelation. Each sin in Inferno is punished according to the principle of contrapasso, a form of poetic justice where the punishment reflects the nature of the sin. The lustful are swept forever in a storm, just as they were once swept by passion. The flatterers wallow in filth, just as their false praise once soiled the truth. This symbolic logic extends throughout the poem, encouraging the reader to meditate not only on the offense, but on its inner consequences. In Purgatorio, the punishments are less retributive than corrective. They are designed to heal the soul's distortions. The proud are bowed under weight, the envious are blinded, the wrathful are immersed in smoke. Yet each terrace offers not just correction, but instruction examples of virtue and prayerful hymns help shape the soul toward its better self. In Paradiso, the symbolic mode shifts again. Here, the soul is not corrected, but illuminated. Dante encounters saints and sages who speak in shimmering metaphors and spiritual paradoxes. The higher he climbs, the more the intellect is refined, until language itself begins to strain under the weight of divine truth. By the end of the poem, Dante must abandon metaphor altogether and surrender to direct experience, the beatific vision. The poem also functions as a moral and political commentary. Dante spares few of his contemporaries. Corrupt popes, greedy bishops, feuding nobles, and cowardly citizens all appear often in hell as examples of societal failure. And yet, he is not without nuance. He shows compassion, especially in Purgatorio, where he recognizes the complexity of the human heart. One of the most remarkable aspects of the comedy is its blend of the universal and the personal. Dante's journey is one every soul must take from confusion to understanding, from sin to redemption. Yet it is also unmistakably his own. He names himself. He feels grief, wonder, fear, and awe. His emotions color the poem, making it not just an epic, but an intimate revelation. And through it all, Dante never wavers from his belief that the cosmos has meaning, that human life, with all its pain and beauty, fits into a larger design. Even the sufferings of hell are not cruel, but just. Even the harshest truths are spoken in the service of love. As you listen now, your breath, slow and steady, imagine the poem as a vast, unfolding mandala, a pattern so intricate and ordered that it can only be seen clearly from above. Each canto a piece of glass in a stained glass window, each image a facet of divine reality. And you, the dreamer, are invited to walk its corridors, guided by reason, love, and the promise of light. Let your thoughts drift gently across its architecture, the circles of hell, the terraces of purgatory, the spheres of paradise, a spiral upward, a return to the stars, a song in 3 parts, written not just to be read, but to be remembered. The Divine Comedy is a map, a mirror, a melody, and like all true masterpieces, it does not end. It opens. The stars have long since risen. The last lights of Florence have faded. And now, in the hush of night, we turn to the final question. Why does Dante still matter? Why, centuries after his death, do we return to his words, his journey, his luminous vision of the soul? The answer, like the poem itself, is layered. On the surface, the Divine Comedy is a dazzling artifact of medieval theology, philosophy, and poetic form. It contains references to Roman emperors and obscure popes, to angels and saints, to scholastic doctrines and medieval cosmology. In this way, it is a window into the intellectual world of the 14th century, a world profoundly different from our own. And yet, it is also timeless. Because underneath the architecture of allegory, we find something deeply human. A man who has lost his way. A guide who offers wisdom. A journey from fear to understanding, from guilt to grace. These are not just Christian themes. They are human ones. They belong to every person who has ever asked, "What is the meaning of my suffering? Is there a right path? Can I be redeemed?" Dante dares to answer these questions not with dogma, but with poetry. He gives us not a set of rules, but a vision, and that vision continues to inspire. Across centuries, the Divine Comedy has echoed in the work of artists, writers, and thinkers. Botticelli illustrated its cantos in delicate ink. Michelangelo studied it. Chaucer read it. Later, T.S. Eliot and James Joyce would draw upon its structure and imagery. Borges admired its architecture. Toni Morrison taught it in classrooms. Even in modern cinema and video games, Dante's descent into hell and rise to heaven appears again and again, proof that his journey has become part of our cultural DNA. But beyond influence and homage, the comedy continues to offer comfort. Especially in times of moral confusion or personal despair, it offers a strange kind of guidance. Not simplistic answers, but a reminder that all things, even suffering, may contain a purpose if seen in the light of love and justice. In an age often shaped by noise, distraction, and disconnection, the Divine Comedy invites us to slow down, to reflect, to imagine the soul as a landscape, to see life not as a series of random events, but as a path one with direction, discipline, and meaning. It also reminds us of the power of language. Dante's choice to write in the Italian vernacular was radical. He believed that truth should not be confined to scholars and clerics. It should be sung in the language of the people. In doing so, he elevated the everyday into the eternal. His lines still carry music, still awaken memory and wonder. And so, whether you are a student encountering Dante for the first time, or a traveler returning after many years, the comedy offers new gifts each time you open it. You may not understand every reference. You may get lost in the hierarchy of angels or the subtleties of sin. But the journey from lostness to light remains clear. Dante's last word is stelle, stars. Each of the three parts ends with it. And we emerged to see the stars once more, pure and prepared to rise unto the stars, the love that moves the sun and the other stars. This recurring image is no accident. The stars represent more than the sky. They are symbols of hope, of destination, of divine order. No matter how dark the forest, the stars still shine. No matter how far we fall, the path upward still waits. And so, as you rest now, held by the silence of night, let this final thought remain with you. The Divine Comedy is not merely a poem to be studied or even admired. It is a path written in verse for the soul to walk, a soft, steady spiral from fear to clarity, from pride to humility, from exile to home. Wherever you are on that path, wandering, climbing, pausing, Dante walks beside you. So does Virgil. So does Beatrice. You are not alone. You never were. Sleep now and dream of stars. Save